OK, well, let's speak to the NHS surgeon, Dr Matthew Pywell. Matthew, thank you very much for joining us. So who's to blame here? Why is the NHS not working? I mean, some of the conditions that patients are expected to put up with are just obscene, really.
It is, and it was it was really shocking to read the report, I share the same frustration and sadness that people have reading this and experiencing this, and my heart goes out to the families and the people who are actually suffering from this level of care in our hospitals. Now, I assure you, as a doctor and as my colleagues nurses, these are not something that we aspire to treat, and this is not a way that we want to treat patients. Now, the issue is that we have not just a crisis of resources here, we have a crisis of approach. The system that we are working within is stretched because of the reactive nature of the approach rather than the preventative nature it could be. So my thinking and our thinking at Apex Medical, where I work, is really to shift focus from managing illness when it's too late and you've got all of these illnesses and those people building up with chronic conditions, to actually shifting the focus on a preventative approach that will reduce the strain on hospitals and ensure patients don't end up in corridors in the first place.
So in plain English here, we're looking at a country that is too susceptible to illness, perhaps because we're too unhealthy, we're too fat, we smoke too much. Is that sort of what you're getting at?
Well, obesity is one of the big issues, being at National Obesity Awareness Week, and 61% of the UK are overweight or obese, and that is a really big issue. And we know that people who are obese and overweight don't deal with medical issues as well. But we also know obesity and overweight also leads to 13 different types of cancers. It also increases the risk of dementia and heart disease. So yes, we know that these things can be prevented.
We're not as fat as the Americans, to put it bluntly. And they don't seem to have a healthcare system that falls over every single winter.
I think they have a very different healthcare system in the US, and it's a very completely different approach they have in the US compared to the UK. Now, that's not my expertise, it's not something I particularly want to go into, but all I can say is that we can see the increasing evidence that's coming out showing that preventative medicine and proactive longevity medicine can actually reduce the risk of people developing disease and reduce that burden as they get older.
I mean, a lot of people are getting in touch and saying it's just because demand is just so high, because the population has increased so much so quickly, and that there's just too much demand on a system that is quite inflexible to that. Do you think that, we always seem to blame the government when it comes to the NHS? It's always the health secretary at that moment's time. This government is blaming the past government blames the past government. All the while, more money is pumped into this system. I just wonder, are the people actually running the NHS on a day-to-day basis doing the right thing? Why aren't they preparing in advance for every winter? Because every winter there's a crisis. There's been a winter crisis, well, since I was born.
Yeah. Absolutely right, and this is a question above my pay grade, and this goes to the governance within the hospital itself. But I know as a clinician, there are things that we can all do on a fundamental level to reduce our risk of developing the flu and colds. Just by certain supplementation, we can actually reduce this risk. So therefore, we're not going to be going into hospitals. But the public aren't aware of this, and it comes down to companies like ourselves that are actually out there to educate the public and teach people what you need to do to actually reduce your risk of developing a cold and flu, so you don't end up in hospital, be it in the corridor or in a bed.
OK, Dr Matthew, just before you go, your top 5 tips. How should Emily and I prevent ourselves from catching some of this nasty flu that seems to be going around this winter?
It's a great opportunity to answer this. So the first thing is all about your diet and lifestyle. Really watch out for the sugar intake. So when I talk about sugar intake, just keep an eye on the amount of sugar you're taking in, because all of that sugar goes into your body, causes inflammation within the body, and that essentially feeds a cold or a flu virus. So that essentially works then to propagate this. The next thing is just making sure you get yourself checked out. Have a health MOT. Once a year, we look after our cars once a year. Look after yourself once a year. Get a blood test. Get checked. Make sure that you've not got anything hidden under the surface that might well be causing you increased risk. So, for example, men over the age of 40, very likely to have low testosterone levels. That will put you at increased risk of developing cold and flu during the cold and flu season. We've talked a lot about weight optimization. So if you are in that, you two look very, very slim and very much in keeping with a normal weight, which is great, but you're in the minority in this population. And we need to really educate people to say, look, actually reducing your weight is going to reduce your chance
Matthew,
of
we're
getting
running out of time. We're running out of time. Can you squeeze in two in just 2 words? Well, we've got three. We've got 3 good tips there. Dr. Matthew Pywell, thank you so much. Thank you very much indeed. No jammy dodgers for Tom Harwood going for